So ever since I found out that Mr. David Butler was coming to our Congress here, I was very excited. He's a very special man. You could say that in many ways he will get to your nerves, and I think that's a really good expression of what he does. He's born, I think, but he usually lives in Adelaide, Australia, where he's also educated as a physiotherapist just around the Second World War. He usually works both in Adelaide in his clinic and also as a lecturer at the University of South Australia. Besides that, he's a world-famous keynote speaker and just as famous an educator, traveling around the world. He's also read several books and articles, and he just finished a doctorate in biopsychosocial education of physiotherapists. His speak today will be on one of the many aspects of the patient education and training which we as physios can tend to do in the future. So I bid you to please give a warm welcome to Mr. David Butler.
Thank you, Morten. Thank you, Morten, and welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to this breakout session, which is, by the way, in very good English. Perhaps the finest English you will hear. Tomorrow you'll hear Gwen Jull's English, and that's different to mine. That's Northern Australian English. This is Southern. Ours is a little clearer. Where are you, Gwen? It's lovely to be back in Denmark and to see so many people. I haven't been here for so long, and it's really nice to see so many people who I met in previous visits. Some of you haven't aged at all. Just lovely. I want to bring you something special and different. I want to bring you a very practical breakout session on graded motor imagery, or as we say, working deep into the neuromatrix in the brain. Let me tell you a little about it. My aim is to introduce the science and clinical applications of the program, but there's a big picture too. It's an example of taking novel science and paradigms and techniques into physiotherapy, and all of you can do that if you want. The definition. We have an emerging evidence-based sequence of strategies to manage known pathoanatomical brain obstacles to rehabilitation. These are laterality, which is the ability to identify a body part as left or right, followed by motor imagery, which is watching or imagining a body part in a certain position or motion, and then mirror therapy, use of a mirror to present a reverse body part image to the brain. The laterality one, what that simply means is, if someone's in trouble, say their right hand has been a problem for some time, it becomes very difficult for them to identify images as left or right. This is working really deep into the brain. It's graded because you have to carry it out for good effect in this order. You have to get laterality back in patients first, so they have to know their left and right again. Then you can move on to imagery, and then you can move on to mirror therapy. And we call it graded because of the sequence requirements, A to B to C, and also because of the need of graded exposure principles. So there are some patients who can only do a little bit of laterality, and you have to grade that. Okay, so who is it for? Well, the randomised controlled trials show that this works for complex regional pain syndrome 1 and phantom pain. Just reflect. There are two horrible neuropathic pain states there that we haven't been able to do much with in the past. Research is currently underway for carpal tunnel syndrome, osteoarthritis in the hand, whiplash and face pain. If CRPS1 and phantoms can be helped, then a whole range of pain states should be able to be helped. And I'm going to take you through the anecdotes that we have as well, that many chronic and some acute pain disorders may benefit from aspects of the program. Okay, this is Rehabilitation 101. You all did this a long time ago. We always broke movement down when we had our patients. So, for example, you could have done a part of a movement, but not moved the painful part. You could have graded it to do part of a movement with the painful part, do more, increase number, increase strength, etc. We all know that. However, Rehabilitation 201, the next step is this, working deep into the matrix. We can work back now, and if you look at this, go back into laterality reconstruction. That is, giving the brain back its ability to identify left and right out there in life. This will affect or influence premotor areas in the brain. We can then do imagery, which ranges from watching movement to imagining movements, and then we can use the mirror movements. Can you see what I mean by working back deeper into the brain? But to go on and understand it, I want to tell you just 5 or 10 minutes about a little bit of neuroscience. 2 gifts from neuroscience. Now, neuroscience is always giving us gifts. They're free, they're out there if we want to take them. Many things we don't take. Let me tell you a little bit about, first, mirror neurons. If a child can't start a pee, how do you get them to start? Run the water, don't you? Have you ever thought how that works? Sports people who excel. Some people can just read a game, can't they? How does that work? Learning guitar. How does that work? Do you really sit with the expert and think their finger is on G, that one is on A, so I better problem solve and do it? Or does something else happen? How do children learn? Who uses pornography here? Put your hand up. Nobody. Well, it must be all the people in Copenhagen then, is it? Have you ever treated necks all day and gone home with a sore neck? How does that work? You see, we're now aware that in our brains there are trillions of mirror neurons in our brains. Here's the legend of the discovery. In Parma, in Italy, in 1996, they had an unfortunate monkey, and it had a little single neuron electrode in its brain that was firing when the monkey ate, kind of going zing, zing, zing. Then the legend has it, someone walked into the lab eating an ice cream. The monkey saw this, and zing, zing, zing went the neuron. They thought, that's interesting, it's firing watching an activity. And then they opened up a few peanuts, the sound of peanuts opening. Zing, 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 it fired. And from then on, we see quite an explosion of research into these mirror neurons. There's some of the key researchers listed below there. We also know that approximately 25% of neurons in your motor areas are mirror neurons. Once again, they fire to watching movement or imagining movement. That person learning to play guitar is playing the guitar in their brain already. The good sports person is already running the game in their brain. And presumably with pornography, you're doing the action in your brain anyway. They fire to watching and imagining. They also fire to non-visual stimuli, as I've already said, like the child who can't pee. Running the water, the sound of water gets the urination going. And in our brains too, there are vast populations of emotional mirror neurons. Do you know how you can sit with a patient who has a complex pain state and sometimes the emotion of it gets you and you get emotional? Skilled therapists can often, in patients with complex pain states, make a distinct cognitive assessment of the problem without getting emotional.